people say, why did I hang out so long? I don't know, my Judaism tells me that I'm supposed to keep Shalom Bayit, the peace of the house, that it's my responsibility.
Well, Shalom Bayit, peace in the home, is an ideal in which the husband and the wife, the mother and the father and the children are all working in sync and in harmony together. Unfortunately, sometimes it can be misused.
Rabbis who have said that they must adhere to the idea of Shalom Bayit in a very particular way, that they had to go home and keep peace in the house, which meant keeping things quiet and being submissive to their husbands, which I think is a misunderstanding of what it means to have Shalom Bayit. In order to have peace, in order to have wholeness, you have to have a sense of equilibrium, which means that there has to be balance, there has to be justice, and there has to be respect.
An ideal Jewish marriage is an equal relationship, an equal partnership between two individuals.
His concept of the man of the house, which meant he dictated everything about what went on in the household, how money was spent, how long we had outside activities, who I could talk to on the telephone, what we ate for dinner.
When the Bible describes the relationship between Adam and Eve, it describes Eve as an ezer kenegdo, a helpmeet opposite him. And I'd like to understand that as meaning that at certain times, the wife is in a supporting role to her husband, just as the husband is in a supporting role to his wife.
Having first married very, very young, and then, marrying again, my idea about a marriage was that you could make anything work if you were willing to compromise.
That there is in a marriage a sense of kedusha, of holiness, of sanctity. And you can't have sanctity when there's fear. There's no sanctity when you can't trust your partner in life.
It's only by appreciating the Tselem Elokim, the divine image in which the other person is created, respecting that, nourishing that, helping that develop, that a good relationship is created.
A Jew must honor his wife more than he honors himself. And that's actually a Talmudic quote. If one strikes his wife, one should be punished more severely than for striking another person. For one is enjoined to honor one's wife, but is not enjoined to so honor the other person.
He asked me a few questions, and I answered them wrong in his view, and he got angrier and angrier. Finally, he stormed back in, and he had a look on his face that I had never seen before. I mean, his face was twisted in rage. And he came over to me, and he just shoved down on my left shoulder, and I sort of went limp in the chair because I've had a ruptured disc a couple of times, and I protect my back at all costs. And I thought, well, just go limp. And he then slid his thumb into my neck and into my jugular vein and just pushed as hard as he could, and just grabbed and pushed in as hard as he could.
The most common question asked in society at large and in media and in books about domestic violence is why the woman stays. And if you think about this, that's awfully interesting, because the question really should be, why does the man abuse? The focus on the woman is a real problem, and it has to do with victim blaming and with giving her responsibility for the whole thing. So we tend to say, why doesn't she leave? Something must be wrong with her. In reality, though, there are tremendous forces keeping women in these relationships. The strongest force typically is fear. The batterer has very often made threats all along to the effect of, if you ever leave, this is what I'll do.
I wanted to give my son a quote-unquote normal life. I wanted him to have two parents. I wanted him to go to Sunday school. I wanted him to be bar mitzvahed, and I wanted him to feel a sense of belonging that I only felt I could give him in a two-parent home.
And I think that when my children were little and I knew how bad things were, I couldn't face how bad they were because I couldn't figure out how I could support them.
The other strong reason women stay is for their children. And they operate very often under the misconception that their children are better off with an intact family, even though there's violence.
My son was safer with my husband when I was not there, because a lot of times if he was angry with me, he knew it was a lot more painful for me to have something happen to Jason. So he would get angry at me and take it out on Jason. And then say, you see what you made me do.
Even if they're not direct victims of abuse, though, they are victims in that the impact of just witnessing their mother being beaten or hit is of great significance. The effects range from psychological effects such as depression, anxiety, somatic complaints. Children often present with stomach aches, headaches, I don't want to go to school.
Abusive in that he'd throw his tirades, you know, in front of the children.
Said, "Don't worry, Grandma." He said that don't worry, if Mommy wants to come out of the room, I will let her out. But if Daddy wants to, I'm ready for him. And he was standing there with a little plastic toy gun, I believe it was a water gun, and he had it aimed. He said, and I will shoot him. I will shoot him dead because he's always making my mommy cry.
And then finally, the major concern for the children is that they will grow up and repeat what they've seen in their own relationships.
To see the two boys interact is to watch the parents interact. David would beat up on Daniel all the time. And it reached a point where Danny would be playing with something and David would come over, grab it away, and Danny would just sit there and accept it. He wouldn't challenge it. And that used to happen with me. I'd be reading a paper nicely and quietly, and then he'd come home from work and he felt he wanted to read it, and without even asking, he'd just pull it away from me.
There's no sense of security in their environment, which is absolutely critical. I mean, for a child to have a sense of self and of self-worth so that that child ultimately can then reach out to others and treat others well, that child has to originally have a sense of safety and security.
Even if it's not physical violence, just the damage that it does to someone's spirit and to the spirit of that child. And for the child to wonder, you know, where's God in my home?
The purpose of having children given to you is to give them a launching pad to go into the world and do the same. To bring the world to a better place. And if you bring children up in a violent home, what you're doing is creating more terror in the world. And that's not what any loving God would want.